Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed. We are in the Phaedo. We are dialecticing the text. And if you watched the last episode, you'll know why. And in summary, we have been in the Phaedo to discover what the heck philosophy is and also what it ain't. Because one of the difficulties we have as human beings and as philosophers is the way that we understand philosophy, the way that we're taught philosophy ain't the way it really is. So there's a bit of a shock. There's lots of surprises when we learn what it is and we learn how to read in a new kind of way, which is kind of the opposite of the way we're taught by the experts in the field. And by the different to the way we're taught at school, reading in a new kind of way to uncover mysteries, puzzles, hypotheses, insights, patterns, lots of, it's very creative process reading, but also to read without interpreting, to read without projecting onto what's there, your own stuff, and leaving out anything that is there. That's interpretation. Now, that's kind of how we're taught to read at school. What does this text mean to you? Now, it can be quite a shock to realize philosophy ain't that. So it's important that we understand what it is and what it isn't, so we understand why we might have some work to do, why it might be a shock to realize, philosophy isn't about debating, it isn't about your own opinions, it isn't about being able to argue your opinions and seem true. It's in fact the opposite. It's about purifying yourself from your own opinions to discover truth and to understand it and to experience it and to join those two things together, integrate that experience through understanding to gain or uncover a certain way of being, and then even that is a stepping stone to a higher way of functioning or higher level of enlightenment. And that's one of the questions we have discovered in reading the text. That was the super mega ultra question Dynamite that we discovered last time. What is beyond even phronesis? What's beyond even escaping the prison of reincarnation? So, big questions. And of course, what do we... Socrates gave us the stages leading to phronesis. Philomathesis, you gotta love learning. What's that? In the text, we discovered it was having your nose in this text. What we might say, having your nose in something that reflects the logos. So we also recognize dreams reflect the logos. The Orange Sutra of philosophical midwifery reflects the logos. And some other Platonic philosophers participate in a high level in the logos. But mainly Socrates. Socrates is very much reflecting the logos to a very high level. So, having your nose in the text and risking what Socrates says as being true. Just like if you become an apprentice mechanic, you got to risk that the person you're training under knows what he's talking about, but also you have to have good reasons to do so. And part of our purification is realizing that our religious beliefs, our cultural mythology, our family beliefs, we do not have good reasons for believing them to be true. They are not master mechanics, they pretend. So, I grew up with this person is not a good reason for them to be true. Otherwise, there wouldn't be truth, because everyone grew up with a different person. We would have 7 billion different versions of truth. That wouldn't be truth, that would be many opinions. Or that person wears a funny hat and is wearing a dress and he's standing on a big stage. That's not a good reason to believe someone. Okay, so purify our cultural beliefs. That's something that has been shown in the text. Simius and Cebes have their own cultural and religious beliefs or mythology about death that's getting in the way of their learning. So this is the right love of learning, recognizing and purifying ourselves from our false beliefs and trusting the Logos that we are discovering and applying ourselves to discover and raising our level of mind to meet the level of mind of Socrates by reading the text without interpretation. Some people like the metaphor of frequency. It's something that we can relate to because light and sound have a vibrational frequency. So we could say, well, let's use that as a metaphor for our own state of mind. We are raising the frequency of our mind to match the frequency of Socrates by learning to read and not interpreting. So those are the two elements. Learning to read, you could say, is our perfection. Not interpreting is our purification. Removing what's false while learning what's true. This is the game of philosophy. Those are the two parts that we discover in the text: purification and perfection. And so we raise our vibrational state of being to match that of Socrates by reading in this way. That's been one of the big puzzles. What is this mysterious way of reading that involves looking for questions, flowing your conclusions on, pushing the implications, key terms, looking for repetition of key terms, synthesizing them all together into a mega super ultimate question, carrying a bag of hypotheses around? Well, I'm not sure what it is exactly, but we have a whole bunch of terms. To unify it together, we have to find some sort of inherent structure in all of those terms that we are using to read in the new way. And our hypothesis is, well, if everything else comes to be the dialectic, if what we're learning is the dialectic, if the structure of the paradigm of everything is the dialectic, then maybe even learning to read is itself following the dialectic. So this way of making sense how to read in this non-interpretive way we might be able to bring all those aspects together when we see that they are in the dialectic. The dialectic can represent all of those qualities that we have been picking up and using as we go. So that's one of the questions. What is this reading? And can we see the dialectic in it? So this is our learning. Trusting the text, repeating it, and if we can find a structure in the text, it will help us to repeat it. So there are we're 90, nearly 100 pages into the text. That's a lot of pages to remember. How do we repeat it? Well, if we know the structure, you're not learning 100 pages. You're learning 4 parts if it's a 4-part structure. Just like learning a song. In music, there are a lot of songs that a musician has to learn. How do you remember them? It seems impossible until you realize there's a structure behind it. And all you have to do is learn the structure, and that will help you to remember the different parts of the song. Oh, the chorus is repeated. The verse usually has 4 or 8 lines, and they are in couplets that rhyme. Makes it a lot easier if you can see the structure. You're not imitating. Well, even at the level of imitation, if you know the parts and the structure of the parts, it makes it a lot easier. So if our first stage, to bring us out of the realm of the many that only are attached to their physical senses, they haven't realized that even in the physical world, everything physical points to the realm of being. All of the ideas that we use to make sense of the physical world are not physical. We have a mind. Beauty and equality don't exist in the physical, but have to exist. Not just for humans, but for anybody. They can see 2 sticks and go, oh, that's equal. 2 is equal to 2. There are fundamental principles needed in our whole physical world that have to exist non-physically. And when we realize that, we have awakened the quest. What the heck is going on? All of the rational questions, the questions that make us rational beings. Where did we come from? What are we supposed to do while we're here? Where are we going? These are the big three. You can dismiss them because they're questions about cause. And questions about meaning. What's our purpose? Well, that's a cause as well. What's the purpose? What's the final cause? Where do we come from? What's the creative cause? What should we be doing here? What's our purpose? It's another kind of cause. Meaning, creation, purpose, destiny. These aren't physical things you can put into a test tube, so dismiss them. Pretend they don't exist. So you can dismiss the questions that make us rational by staying trapped in materialism. Only the physical world exists. Last time somebody had a question, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, about Stoic thought. The virtues just are physical, and there's nothing beyond the physical. Stoic thought. Using the language of philosophy, but staying trapped in the physical world. That's called Stoicism. So, we don't want to stay trapped in ignorance. By the way, those are still things you are doing. You are still doing something. You are still pursuing a goal. You still are pursuing some kind of purpose or meaning. Whether you like it or not, you still recognize beauty, whether you like it or not. Even if some crazy, oppressive tyrant or cultist or religious leader wants to make you feel bad about doing it, beauty is bad, it's sinful, it's impure. Doesn't matter what the meaning, that's still a meaning that they're putting on beauty. So you are still seeking meaning, and your life is still running by meaning. And by the way, doesn't matter if you've been having a negative, if you're believing somebody's negative meaning about beauty, you're still going to recognize beauty. Because that's what beauty is. It's immediate. You don't have to think about it. You recognize it. That's why we can make sense of the idea in the text. Learning is remembering. You can recognize equal things. You can recognize beautiful things. So these are causes that motivate us no matter what. The difference is if we don't apply ourselves to understanding them for ourselves, we will be manipulated by other people who will force their meaning and get you to be slaves to help them reach their goals at the expense of your own destiny. You still will look for beauty even if you grew up in a cult or a religion that says beauty is bad. You will still pursue some sort of meaning even if you're told that it's selfish to have a meaning and you need to be a sheep and follow someone else's meaning. Onward Christian soldiers marching as to war is one of the songs from Christianity that I heard. They're giving you a purpose. They're giving you a meaning. The difference is we can recognize just because they told us doesn't make it so. That is irrational or absurd. One definition for faith is an absurd belief. It's absurd to think that just because I say so. But what makes you? What makes you better than me? Oh, I am closer to God. Peter said that you will stink, and only those who I select are the best ones, and you have to do whatever we say, even though it's objectively absurd. Cannot be proven or verified through evidence and reason. Oh, well, if Peter said it, if Abraham said it, if Yahweh said it. Of course, this is absurd. This is manipulation. This is tyranny. Why? Because they're taking away your purpose to understand for yourself the nature of meaning, the nature of beauty, your purpose here, where you came from, where you're going, so you can play the game you're in well. You're in the game anyway. You are a human soul. Or if you're watching this from some other galaxy, you are an intelligent, ensouled being. Or if you're watching it from another galaxy and you have, you don't need a physical form anymore, you are a psyche. There is something that's unified your consciousness that gives you a sense of self. And you have the ability to participate in language, logos, intelligibility, and you have the ability to reflect or ousia on yourself. So wherever you're finding the series, you have the ability to recognize for yourself, to understand for yourself, to develop for yourself. And anyone you're an apprentice under who says that you shouldn't is a con artist and is taking advantage of you. And of course, this is where the origin of our false beliefs come from. Before we had developed the art of the logos, we believed people who weren't trustworthy for absurd reasons. They happened to be around when we were little, seems to be the big one. But before we had the art of the logos, to ask questions. And Socrates made this abundantly clear. This is important. You have to realize you're here to learn the art of the logos. So we're in the game anyway, we're seeking meaning anyway, and those people who say there is no meaning, or you can't know your purpose, or you can't know where you came from, or you can't know where you're going, and it can't be understood, and you can't use that knowledge and understanding to develop an art of doing that well and helping others. These are people who are silencing your mind, your questioning, your reading, because having a question about what's most meaningful is reading. That's reading. They're silencing your ability to read. And reading is the first stage of getting out of the prison of the physical body and the chains of our physical body and the imprisonment of repeating cycles of reincarnation, either between lifetimes or in each moment, because if you reflect, you might find, wow, I'm reincarnating or repeating into a same sort of problem every time. Every time I go to work, every relationship I'm in, every time I seek something meaningful or beautiful, it's like I'm reincarnating into the same kinds of problems. We want to escape from that prison. It's like jumping into a video game that you are in and someone saying, oh no, you can't know the rules. There are no rules of this game. There is no final boss. Of course there is. They want you to not pick it up for yourself so you can be manipulated because they think that's what's good. To harm your enemies is an idea of justice. To manipulate the stupid, says the rich capitalists. Yes, it's good that we are exploiting the planet and the animals and the people because they are dumb compared to me. I am best. And how do you benefit from being best? You become billionaires by exploiting everybody else. Capitalism. Yay. Of course, again, absurd. There's no reasons or evidence for that. And the reasons and evidence show it's the opposite. And one of the techniques is to say, you can't know, just believe. Just have hope in a politician. Just have faith in a religious figure or religious belief. Don't purify that which is false, that limits you. Don't learn for yourself, and don't verify that in your own experience. All of the stages of growth. So every time we have that voice or that family member or that cool pastor who works at the community center that we go to, that says, hey, stop this philosophy or thinking for yourself. Don't you know you are nothing without Jesus? You're nothing without Allah. You're nothing without Joseph Smith. Just surrender to him, and me, who's the one who gets to say what he thinks. Just surrender to us, right? Socrates says that's dangerous, they're not trustworthy, and when you realize that no human is ideal, everyone has a problem, everyone is at some level of development. Having an art is to be able to judge. If you trust these people, they will let you down and they will hurt you, and then after many blows like that, you might end up hating humanity, just like you might end up hating reasoning itself. That's the biggest problem of the soul. Do not hate the logos just because people misuse it. Well, don't share in the logos, but pretend to. So that's where we are. We are learning the logos, having good reason to trust the logos in the text, and we are repeating it. That's true learning. And from there, we are in order to learn better, to repeat it, to remember it, to talk about it, we can look for the structure in it. How do we take these 100 different pages and see them as 4 parts or 2 parts so that we can remember it like the way we remember a song? And then that will help us in our learning, philomathesis. Then we have to take the next step out of trust to dianoia, understanding for ourselves. Again, is there a system or structure in understanding? And could it be the same one we use to help our remembering? And then even that, dianoia, understanding for yourself, being able to follow the arguments, being able to understand, if you're a mechanic, how and why the engine works. You don't have to believe anyone anymore, you've understood it. How terrible for fascists and tyrants. You can think for yourself. What about my lovely power over people? Oh well, you might have to learn a more just way of relating to people. Oh, and that might benefit your soul. Smelly fascists. Okay, so, and that dianoia, following a certain structure, leads into direct experience of that which you are understanding. You can see it for yourself. So one of the things that can reject, one of the people who are anti-logos, haters, or are lovers of philonikos, lovers of debate and fighting and shutting people down, lovers of conflict and drama, they're addicted to the drama. They will say, you can't know these things. You can't know the afterlife. You can't know what you were before you were born. You can't know what the nature of God is. You can't know what the cause of God is. You can't know what even the gods seek to reach, a place beyond that. These are unknowable. Again, that's what philosophy ain't. That's a good way of shutting your mind down. That's a good way of putting a glass ceiling over you. A limitation. Of course, to believe them just because they are loud or scary or obnoxious or there are a lot of people yelling the same thing is absurd. It is irrational because those are not good reasons. That's not evidence. So, we have to purify ourselves from that. The same way Socrates is helping Simmias, Cebes, Phaedo, and all the other dudes in the prison on Socrates' last day, helping them purify themselves from these limitations. So, having been freed of our limitations, what's the next step after philosophy or loving of dianoia? Which will be made easier if we have a structure. What's the next step after that? Phronesis. You can experience the realm of being. So in modern language, you might say, raise yourself to a higher vibrational level to access a higher a dimension of reality. What we call in philosophy, we call it the realm of being. That's awakening the eye of the soul. What we call ousia. That experience is noesis or nous, what we read in the text as knowledge. You can know it by reuniting with it. You are it. It's immediate, it's obvious. Well, there's the question. It's obvious in one way, but to the level you've developed your dianoia, is that level to which you can make sense of it, go into the state further, recognize what you're seeing, and also when you come back into your body, integrate that experience. So noesis with dianoia, with the learning, making it a complete spiritual tradition. It's not just the, jumping in the deep end without any understanding. There are lots of, integration, going into it further, maintaining it, not running away from it. Lots of reasons why it's important to use dianoia as a method. Just like any art. Therefore, we can understand for ourselves why Socrates says many are the staff bearers, many are the people who call themselves spiritual, but only true spiritual tradition is this. Philodianoia or philosophia, philosophy. And what's the doorway? Well, that same structure that if we apply this structure to the text, it will help us remember the structure in our right learning. That same structure that we apply to dianoia or our own understanding to develop that as a practice and art. That same structure we can apply to our experience of nous. Is the doorway into it, is the way of making sense of it, and is the way of going beyond it. So there's the where you come from in, what do you do while you're there, and where are you going? Oh, the three questions we said make us rational as human beings is the kind of thing we take with us into the next realm. Where did we come from? Oh, the physical world. What were you doing there? Oh, mastering the art of the dialectic. The structure is the dialectic. What should I be doing here? Using the dialectic to understand, make sense of, and recognize in greater depth where I am. And where do you go? Well, the ticket to the next place seems to be the dialectic. So what's our first learning? What's true learning? Philomathesis. Trusting the logos and repeating it. How do we do that? Well, if we can see there's a structure, if we can see the text follows the dialectic structure, and that will help us remember the parts of the text. And if we can see that in each of those parts of the text, within each part, there is the same four-part structure of the dialectic, then we can even remember the parts of those four wholes or four sections. If every conversation Socrates has is a dialectic, we will be able to remember it by applying the dialectic structure to it. So helping our remembering. What's that leading us into? So that's what we're doing while we're here. And where are we going? Leads us into philosophy, loving the dialectic, philodianoia, understanding it for ourselves. How do you understand it for yourself? You apply the dialectic to it. So to better remember it, mastering level 1 is also a doorway into level 2. That's where we practice the art of the dialectic consciously. So where did we come from? Learning. where we realize the importance of the dialectic. What do we do while we're here? Practice and master the dialectic. Where are we going? Well, the transition to the next realm is through the dialectic, the realm of being. These are the three questions we said make us rational as human beings. Where do we come from as human beings? What do we do while we're here? Where are we going? Three questions that might have a theme. And in the realm of being, we pushed the implications. Part of the dialectic is pushing the implications, the consequences that follow. That's the division stage. So if we recognize a pattern in philosophy, push it, see where it can be applied in other places. Can what we just discovered about the importance of the dialectic in learning and understanding, can it also apply to knowledge, nous? Well, where did we come from? Well, we came from mastering the dialectic. That's what brought us to the realm of being. What do we do while we're here? Good question. In fact, in the text, Socrates says, when you can separate from the body, you are doing something. You are continuing to collect self together, self by self, while out of the body. It's not the end. There is something you have to do while out of the body. Interesting. So what do you do in the realm of being? Interesting. Collect self by self. Sounds like the first stage in the dialectic. So, what's the end of the dialectic? You synthesize everything that you've understood in the realm that you're at, and you wonder about it as a whole. This is synthesis and analysis, and what caused all these things. Just like when you do dream analysis, you see that there's a dialectical structure within each of the parts. Within the whole, there are dialectical sections, and within each of those, there's a dialectic. And in your review with someone practicing the art of dream analysis, a midwife, they ask you the same sorts of questions of the dialectic. At the end of it, you realize your dreams know about you, is helping you, is extending that help in a curious kind of way that requires you to practice the art of the dialectic to get the gift. And you see how it applies not just to your dream, but to your immediate life, to help you in your immediate life. But also that pattern is itself repeated throughout your life. So it's an even greater question to do with why you're here as a soul. So the dream operates in many different levels of meaning to help you in the most beneficial way, using a high level of degree of mastery of the art of the logos. So at the end of a dream analysis, you are encouraged to reflect on, what do you make of dreams themselves? Not just the content and how you can benefit from it, but what about dreams themselves? Why do you think dreams can function in this curious way? So the last stage of your reflection is on the whole. That's synthesis analysis. Can you see the whole in a new way, having gone through the dialectic? And also, what could be the cause of that? Let's write this down. So we've talked about the three levels of learning. So we have philomathesis, or right learning. We have philosophia, or philodinoia. True philosophy. So also let's say right philosophy. Let's say true philosophy, because right means the right way of doing it among many, but true is just singular. And that leads, of course, into phronesis. And I'm not entirely sure how to summarize that yet. We've also said that to be rational, we have 3 questions. Where did we come from? Where are we going? Actually, that's the 3rd one, isn't it? Where are we going? What should we be doing? We be doing while here. So, these are the questions that make us rational as human beings, and also in any video game you play. Where did my character come from? What should I be doing? What's the goal of the game? Where am I going? Where's the final boss? And we can see this is also what makes us rational as human beings. And anybody who wants to oppress you will say, you can't answer these questions. You can't ask them. Shut up. Silence is golden. Children are to be seen and not heard. God created hell for Christians who ask questions. Right? So we want to ask these questions. And we are carrying as a hypothesis. We don't know it yet until we can verify our hypothesis in news. But we saw, hang on a second, in the right love of learning. So in learning, to repeat, to trust and repeat the text of the Logos, the Phaedo, it's going to help us to have the structure. If you know that there are parts to it, it'll help you remember the parts. And if you know what the parts are supposed to do, it'll help you remember them so you can repeat them. That's our hypothesis is the structure of the text is the dialectic. Why? Because it seems to be what keeps coming up for us, dialectic. And it hasn't failed us yet. So that's learning. Then this next stage of philosophy, we can ask the question, in philosophy, where did we come from? We came from learning and repeating the dialectic. What do we do while we're here? Continue to practice and master the art of the dialectic. That's what we're seeing is the underlying essence of everything we've been seeing all through the text to do with what is true philosophy. And therefore, the next question, where are we going? That's what we apply the dialectic to. The dialectic is applied to being. Applied to being, and is also the doorway to nous, which is the experience of being. And we can also call that contemplation. No, I don't want to use the word contemplation right here, because that wouldn't imply that we would have to say that contemplation. Actually, no, let's do it. Okay, so that's called contemplation, when you join with your object of concentration. So what's our learning? To trust and repeat. That's a kind of focused concentration on the logos of the text. Concentrating on the logos. Wow. Okay, what does that lead to? Philosophy. What we should be doing while we're here. What's that? To master the art of the dialectic. So what's that? The virtues. You have to understand it. Definition. You have to practice it. Demonstration. At all times, even in your problems. Division. And then you have to, after going through all that, reflect on it as a whole. Synthesis. And also its cause, analysis, which is why this last stage is the doorway to the next stage. So you're doing a dialectic on the dialectic. You're dialecting a dialectic. So it's double layers. So you're using the dialectic for repetition, but now you're dialecticing the dialectic. You're defining it, demonstrating it. So what's that? That's sustained concentration or meditation. Let's move this up a little bit. So it's a double layer of dialectic. You're not just using it to repeat in our love of learning, in true learning, but it's a different level. It's sustained concentration. It's a different level of the use of the dialectic. Sustained concentration, the word for that is meditation. And what's the goal of meditation? Where is it going? Contemplation. What's that? When you join, let's say nous. You join, you nous or join with your object of meditation. So these are the three stages in meditation. Meditation is sustained concentration, sustained meditation. So sustaining this, improving this. So we learn the dialectic so we can repeat the text. That leads into realizing, well, why don't we actually master the art of the dialectic? Demonstrate it, define it, use it always, and reflect on it as a whole. Oh, so we're dialecting the dialectic. That's sustained concentration on the same thing with a different level of depth, focus, passion, interest, wonder, That's meditation. Formally, those are the conditions for meditation. Any yoga hall will be doing whatever they can think of to create those conditions. How can they create a sense of wonder? Have everyone walking around and talking like this? How can they create a sense of interest or passion or motivation? They can make promises. If you meditate, you can remove your stress and live a happier life. How can they keep a question open, a sense of wonder and curiosity? They could give you a koan. What's the sound of one hand clapping? So these are just different techniques to create the conditions that is already there in philosophy, in the dialectic, in this progress. What Socrates is calling our purpose here. So sustained concentration is meditation. And then what happens if you sustain this? If you keep doing the dialectic at all times, division, and wondering about it as a whole, synthesis analysis, and wondering about its cause. That leads into contemplation, which is the joining with your object. And what's been the object of the dialectic? Being, beauty itself, justice itself. These are all different aspects of being, what used to be called forms, but we now call them ideas. Now we say idea because it's not idea. It's a Greek word that means to behold, or aspects that you can behold or experience or join with, experience in being. It's what the word idea means, not forms, not concept. So dialectic is applied to that, and it's the doorway to that. So these three questions that make us rational in any video game we play: where did our character come from? What should our character be doing while we're here? And what's the goal? Where are we going? Or to be a human being, the questions that are rejected by anybody who is not serving your interests, be it news, be it teachers, be it cult leaders, be it politicians. If they're not saying, actively doing what they can to encourage the conditions for you to ask these three questions, they are making you, by definition, irrational, and they are harming you. Well, for as long as we believe it, we will be harmed by that way of being. And they're not serving us or humanity, because humanity needs to become rational. I mean, definitionally. We don't want to act irrationally and against our interests, the interests of each other, and the interests of the planet where we should be guardians over. Helping the environment, not destroying it. So what are those questions? Where do we come from? What should we be doing? And where are we going? So whenever you ask these questions and someone comes along, or an inner voice comes along, and say, shut up. For whatever reason, you are not good enough. Reality isn't good enough for it to be rational. It is irrational. Or reality isn't good enough because not only maybe it's rational, but it doesn't allow you to know for yourself. So either reality isn't good enough, or you're not good enough. Or logos isn't good enough. Those are the three. Logos, reality, or mind, and you, or self. These are the big three. You are not good enough. Reality isn't understandable or knowable, or you definitely can't get there through use of your logos, reasoned dianoia. This is what it says. This is the theme. This is their kick. This is their catchphrase. We can recognize that as making us irrational and not serving us and not in line with the art. So evidence of someone with a problem. So we can smile, nod, and walk away. Or if they are somebody in this game, the human quest, then we can ask some questions, which is the dialectic. Because that is what makes it an art. The use of questions artfully to direct them through their own self-reflection to realizing they are stuck in a problem. And what they think is knowledge being to pass their opinions on to others in a way that harms them or keeps them trapped in the same game they're trapped in under. My dad said you can't know being, or my priest says you can't know God, and I want to be wise, and he's my image of wisdom, so I'm going to tell you whatever, right? You've ever read a book or a movie? It seems to turn out that the problem created that the main character is in, or even the villain is in, is that he's repeating the same way of being from his parents or whatever was his parental surrogate. Could be a priest, a teacher, or whatever. It always seems to be that way. Of course it is, because that's where we learn it, right? So if somebody is silencing this irrationality, these three questions, they are in a problem, and we could, leave them to be in their journey, or if they're in this game, we could ask them a question like Socrates does with his friends to benefit them. Where did we come from? What should we be doing while we're here? And where are we going? Concentration to meditation to contemplation. And what's curious about this is, in philosophy, what helped us to get here? Or what are we doing while we are here? Well, our conclusion, our hypothesis is to master the art of the dialectic, or dialectic to dialectic. So it's a sustained concentration on a singular activity. What's that? Meditation. Sustained focus on a singular activity that's profoundly meaningful, can unite the parts of our soul. We can use it for our thinking, for our activities, and we can desire it. Those are the virtues. So what's that? A harmony within our soul, a harmonized, unified, singular focus on that which is most interesting with an open, curious, receptive state of mind, curiosity. We don't know, we have questions and hypotheses, and the more questions and hypotheses we carry, the more open and receptive and curious to the ways that the answers can come, the ways that the logos can the ways that the logos can extend that providential care and direction through our dreams, through the text, through our life experiences, open to the logos. That's meditation. Definitionally, those are the conditions for meditation. And if you're meditating on these sorts of things, that which is most high, or where are we going, your goal, your destiny, because hey, while we're doing this, we're not just mastering the dialectic so we can get good at debating. No. We're mastering it so we can get to where we're going. There is a goal. Where do we go after we die? We go to the realm of being, or Hades, or the unseen. Well, what if we can get there before we die? So we can get good at it, understand it, go into it deeper, maybe even go beyond it. So that when we get there, we don't just come back and forth, stuck in the prison of reincarnation. So where we're going is our goal for here and after. So we keep in mind our goal while we do it. So the dialectic is applied to the aspects of being, which is also the doorway to the experience of nous. So what are we seeing? Where we came from, ideally, was using the dialectic to remember and repeat with our friends in this text, in this channel, in Discord, in the comment section. What do we do while we're here? Master the art of the dialectic. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the text, see if the structure is the dialectic so we can remember the parts of the text now that we've read through it. But also, so that's where we came from. We've already read the text as a whole, 100 pages thereabouts. But that's going to be hard to remember, so we're going to see if we can cut those pages up into the structure of the dialectic. So that's where we came from. What are we doing while we're going through it the second time? We are going to apply the dialectic to it. So we're applying the dialectic to the text, but ourselves will be doing a dialectic. So there's the different layers. We are going to be the dialectic ourselves because we are defining the dialectic, demonstrating it, practicing, repeating it everywhere else. And as we go, we're going to reflect on the dialectic itself. That's what we're doing now. This is our dialectic training in this part of the series. And why? Because we're keeping in our mind that we're doing this for the sake of phronesis, which Socrates says will help us not only finally escape our human problems by escaping from being nailed to the physical senses and the physical body and its fears and desires and pleasures and things, but if we can get there and apply the dialectic to it, maintain it, use it as a paradigm. So this is the division stage. So we can define it to get there in philosophy. We can experience it, demonstrate it in nous. We can divide it up. We can use it for our paradigm in the use of our dialectic to better understand our goal, to understand knowledge and beauty and truth, to understand the text. That's division. And of course, we can go through all that and reflect on it, synthesis, and its cause, analysis, to wonder about phronesis itself and the cause of phronesis. Socrates says this, if you're doing this, then you can escape the prison of reincarnation and go to that sixth dimension where better men and gods are hanging out and having fun, fellow travelers and guides. And of course, that leads to another question. So if we're doing the dialectic on even phronesis, what's that last question? What's its cause? That leads us to the super ultimate mega question, Dynamite. What is the level of learning after phronesis? Where are we going after we get to that place where we're going? After we get to the sixth dimension, what's the sixth dimension? What's the seventh dimension? What would be the stage above, beyond, or cause of being? These were the three questions we came up with last time with their super ultimate mega question, Dynamite. These three questions here. What's the learning beyond phronesis? What's the place we're going after we get to the place we're going? Or what's the stage beyond nous, or nous being or contemplation? Beyond or the cause of being, nous, or contemplation. Let's make a bit more space. Okay, oops. So these were the three questions. Three questions beyond or cause of being, the experience of it as nous or contemplation. Who is contemplating? What is the cause of being? Why does nous exist? These were the three questions. Three questions that Socrates gave us in the text that said, hey, by the way, I'm not going to talk about it. What? Why? Maybe he's benefiting us. By teaching us the importance of looking for questions to develop our curious state for meditation. Questions. Create our own hypotheses, our ifs. Like this question here came from an if. This question here came from Socrates said, there's another question about, what do you say? Oh yeah, there's another place even more beautiful in the sixth dimension. So he told us that we had to develop a question. We had to apply that to our learning to say, hang on a second, what's the stage of learning beyond phronesis? So that's our hypothesis. And also we had to be doing it to realize, hang on a second, if we are doing the dialectic in our learning where we came from, and that's what we master while we're here in true philosophy, the dialectic, we are becoming like the dialectic itself at the same time, then wouldn't it follow that this doing is the kind of habit and training we bring into the state of being? Sure. Well, what's the consequences of that? That's part of having a hypothesis. So we developed a question, we developed a hypothesis. Hang on a second, that's our question. Wouldn't we be bringing the dialectic into our experience of being or enlightenment? There's our question. We've been practicing getting questions, learning to read. Well, what do you do with the question? You put it in your question sack, carry it, polish it up nicely, but also create a hypothesis. If that's the case, then maybe what? Push the implications, the divisions, push the pattern. Then we would want to be doing the dialectic while we're here. So we are doing it. And what happens if we do it? We will realize the last stage of, well, if we have been doing it, we realize we have definition, self itself, demonstration, self to another, division, dividing up to all the others, and then synthesis, analysis, other back to self, where we reflect on the whole and its cause. Synthesis and analysis. Synthesize it into a whole and understand the thing and its cause. So if we were doing it, we would give birth to this question. What is the cause of being nous? So these are three essential elements that we are discovering in how to read. And if we are not seeing the value of questions because we read so we can just memorize and repeat it, to get a good grade in the text, to get a PhD, to win in debate with a debate bro, to shut down other people and seem smart and get clicks on YouTube, then you are not going to be seeing the value in questions. You are not going to realize that there is this question here. You are going to miss it. You will be uninitiated. It's a kind of qualification for initiation. If you're not in the game, you will not get in the game. So on one level, it's still esoteric, even though we are talking about it explicitly. You won't see the value in questions, you'll miss this. If you're not realizing that part of reading is also not just discovering and carrying questions, but creating your own hypotheses. You won't create a hypothesis if that's the case, that there's a seventh dimension, a better place than the sixth. And if the sixth you get to with phronesis, what then is the level of learning that phronesis is in that's above phronesis? If you are not seeing the value of developing your own understanding, and again, you are just a debate bro or a academic who just wants to repeat for the sake of repetition and not for their own development of understanding, you will miss this question here too. So he's teaching us the value of reading. Questions, hypotheses. If you're not doing it, if you're not doing this in the right way, which is what the dialectic, you won't realize that the last stage of the dialectic is to reflect on the whole and its cause, meaning you won't give birth to the new question, doing it, or cause, allowing you to give birth to this question here. What is the cause of even true being. So these are three questions that come to light if we are learning to read, if we are hypotheses, questions, and actually applying it. And last time so hang on a second. Maybe these three could be related in the super ultra mega question Dynamite. Maybe. Because this new kind of learning we'll have to do to get into this, to answer this question of what's the second. If phronesis is the ticket into the club of the sixth dimension, our goal, where we're going, then what's the ticket? What's the learning we can do while we're here to get the ticket to the seventh? So these are related. What is the seventh or the best place? What's the ticket or learning to get in there? But also, if this is being, if phronesis is the highest level of being, if this is the meaning of life or the highest experience being, to be on the surface of the realm of being, not under the mud, under the surface in the mud, then we wonder, what caused it? There has to be a cause for the realm of being. Well, if it's the cause, it's beyond it. Like the seventh dimension is beyond and would maybe be causal of the sixth. So now we can join them together. Hang on a second. Does that mean the seventh dimension is not just beyond the sixth, but is the cause? Oh, we're learning more about the seventh. Does it require a state of self that's beyond even the integration of being? What's beyond the brilliant light of knowing everything? If everything all connected all at once is a kind of oneness, how could we do it even better? How could we be a one, not a oneness of parts, but a pure, clear, altogether immediate one? Maybe. So now we are creating a hypothesis to rub these ideas together. Because we've got a super ultra mega question, but now we have to create a super ultra mega hypothesis. And that's what we're going to be doing as we go through. Can we create and build a super ultra mega hypothesis Dynamite to answer this question? That only would have come to light if we were doing it. Walking the talk. Now, we realized this question when we said, well, hang on a second, the last stage of the dialectic that we take, that helps our remembering, that leads us into true philosophy, mastering the art of the dialectic. That's a kind of practice and training for the realm of being. The last stage in that, when applied to the highest, excellence, is reflecting on it as a whole and its cause. Hang on a second. Give both to this question, but hang on a second. That's two, reflecting on it as a whole, synthesizing it together, but also analyzing or wondering about the thing itself. How do you wonder about something? You wonder about its cause. Just like Socrates wanted to know, what the heck are we doing here? And he went to teachers and they were interested in causes. What do you do in physics? Talk about the physical causes of things. What do you do in chemistry? Talk about the chemical causes of things. What do you do in anthropology? Talk about the historical causes of things. What do you do in psychology? Talk about the behavioral causes of things. What do you do in true philosophy? Wonder about the actual true causes of causes themselves, the highest level of causes, and ranking all of the causes. You incorporate everything, including physical causes, but the cause of that in the realm of mind. But as Socrates says, you got to do the third search for causes, the causes even of the causes of mind. Metaphysics, realm of being, is the study of causes most accurately. All of those other categories, chemistry, physics, anthropology, are all physical causes. That's the tradition or the legacy of Aristotle. Aristotle gave up on metaphysics, on being, and instead liked to categorize things physically. He sent his student Alexander the Great, a terrible murderous tyrant who thought it was just to go out and conquer and kill people and abuse them. While you're out on your expeditions, Alexander the Great, send back flower samples and earth samples so I can categorize them into physical categories, or botany, or chemistry, or physics. Categorizing the physical world into its categories, that's the legacy of modern education. Stuck before even here. Because he studied Plato. He could have remembered and repeated the text in right learning, but he didn't do it. Now, modern philosophers follow on Aristotle's tradition. He was kicked out of the academy. He missed the mark. Now, modern philosophers, when they refer to Aristotle, who caused our way of learning, not true learning, but how can we divide the physical world up into chemistry students and botany students and engineering students and anthropology students, all looking at different categories of only the physical. Even psychology, which is supposed to be about the psyche or soul, they're interested in behaviorism. And they often prescribe chemicals that are physical, chemistry, neurochemistry. Everyone's on, I don't know, some antidepressant or whatever. Be careful about saying that, because often those people who are actually struggling with the human problem that we're here to solve, the only solution they've been given is a chemical one. The only diagnosis they've been given is a physical one. So they might be very, very relieved to finally have someone who takes them seriously, recognizes they have a problem, isn't treating them like a cog in a machine. So they might get very attached to that diagnosis from Aristotle's tradition of physical chemistry. We are saying, okay, that might have helped you in some way, given you that, met that need for recognition that you aren't a machine and you do have a problem. The only difference is we want to help people understand the cause of problems. It ain't physical. It has a physical manifestation in the realm of being, but the causes for everything has to be in the realm of being, by definition, that we can understand for ourselves. So, the art of philosophical midwifery is specifically using this dialectic that we do in each level, that leads us to here, that makes us wonder, maybe even in this seventh dimension we're doing the dialectic. The use of it applied to human everyday problems is what Socrates did too, is what the Hellenics knew too. Aristotle screwed the game up. I mean, you could say the Athenians killed Socrates before he was able to teach Plato, because Plato was young when Socrates was murdered, and that's what we're reading here in the Phaedo. And therefore, Plato couldn't midwife Aristotle, and therefore Aristotle's legacy. So moderns, when they talk about Aristotle, they often call him the philosopher, as though he is the epitome of philosophy, even though Socrates is saying literally he is the definition of non-philosophy, and dialectic requires you to see what it is and what it ain't. So, the philosopher, someone not in any of these stages, rejecting these stages, this clever thinking, is our tradition, is modern tradition. So modern philosophers often call him the philosopher. Plato called him the brain, not the philosopher. Socrates would diagnose him as having a problem and not being in the game at all. In fact, when we read the opening of the Parmenides, we see a 19-year-old Socrates encountering a philosopher, Parmenides, and straight away Parmenides was able to diagnose Socrates' problem, which you could see is very similar to the problem that Aristotle had too, that wasn't diagnosed by someone like Parmenides. Parmenides gave Socrates not just a diagnosis, but gave him some instruction. We have a quote from when we read that together. Here is your instruction. Collect thyself together. The same language that's been repeating through here at the end of Socrates' life. So he did it. He took it to heart. Exercising in that way that appears useless to the many, the dialectic. Wow. They call it empty talk, and if you do not, while you're young, the truth will utterly elude you. So this is Parmenides' instructions. And there's another one here we have. Permit the real being to be, opposite of Aristotle. Keep your mind fixed on the objections and others like them, your problems, counterattacks, inner critic, haters that silence your questions, what we're looking at today. Keep those in mind. And you could even go for, Parmenides doesn't mention this, but we can realize not just keep them in mind, take notes about them, apply the dialectic to them. That's this book, the Midwifery series we have on the channel. To purify the problem in the way that wasn't done to Aristotle and therefore had these tragic implications on our history ever since Socrates. So, permit the ideas of real beings to be, unlike Aristotle. Keep your mind fixed on the objections, and we can add, and do a dialectic on them, because we're supposed to be doing a dialectic to even our problems. That's the division of dialectic. Wasn't done to Aristotle or Alexander the Great or Plato. Define each one of the particular ideas, that's the dialectic, but also allow the idea of each one of the real beings, each of these ideas, aspects of being, to be of the self. That's the power of dialectics. So this was the instruction given to Socrates, and he did it. And we're reading about it now at the end of his life. But that last part might give us a clue. Permit all of the ideas in real being, contemplation, phronesis, where we're going, our goal of our activity, to be of the self. That's the power of dialectic. So maybe one hypothesis we can add to our super ultra mega question dynamite. These three could be something to do with the self, maybe, question mark. Let's keep that in mind as we go. It might be cheating a little bit, because we're we're jumping out of this text into the Parmenides, or maybe it's not, because we are looking at Socrates at the end of his life and the Parmenides at the start. These could be bookends. And literally, the Parmenides gave us the dialectic that is being hinted at all the way through the Phaedo. So maybe you can only solve the mystery by putting them together. Maybe. Again, hypothesis. We don't know. We're keeping an open mind as we wonder. So the super ultra mega question dynamite of what is the cause even of being is a kind of came from doing it, applying it to the cause, let's give these aspects. So these are the aspects of reading that we're wondering about. What is this weird way of reading that we're doing that's unlike anything else that we learn at school? Well, we have our ifs in our if sack. We have our questions. These are in our inventory that we carry with us as adventurers. Ifs. We have questions. Our question sack. And we also are doing it. Or demonstration. Demonstrate. Let's get some more space. let's put it underneath. Doing it or demonstrate what we define. Talk the talk and walk the walk. And eagle-eyed viewers will recognize, yes, these are the first two categories of the dialectic. So we're going to do it. So these is all part of reading. Now, we also saw that the last category of the dialectic is a kind of ousia, or reflect on the whole and its cause. Right. That's our synthesis analysis stage. Now, we can also recognize that, hang on, this reflection on the whole is a kind of ousia. So we have our categories: demonstration, definition, division, synthesis analysis. It's self-contained. But not just self-contained, you reflect on the whole in a new way, but also reflect on its cause. That led us. So when you do dream analysis, at the end of it, you say, hey, what caused dreams to have the wisdom they have? What caused this providential communication to me in my dream last night? This is the last stage. So what does that mean? That means we have another set of three. What have we got so far? Learning. Learning involves what? Right learning, or philomathesis. Loving it. Which is a kind of trusting and repeating the text of the logos. That we will do better if we can see the structure of the dialectic in the logos, so we know the sections. Okay, what does that lead to? True philosophy, true philosophia, or true philodianoia, which is what? Mastering the art of the dialectic. So going through to those parts that we've seen in our learning. So where did we come from? Seeing the parts to help us remember the parts. Now, what do we do to it? Apply the dialectic to it. This is our dialectical training we're doing now in the series. Dialecting those stages of the dialectic. So that's what are we doing while we're here? This is our training, the meaning of a human life. What's the next stage? What does the art of the dialectic or true philosophy lead into? Phronesis. So philomathesis to philosophia to philophronesis, where we experience nous and join with it, make it our own. That's why you have to be dialecticing the dialectic, not just defining the ideas of being, but practicing it at all times with your virtues, so you can join and integrate it into a state of self called phronesis that can use the logos. As it said in the text, people who are anti-logos and are unenlightened don't know whether the logos they're talking about maintains phronesis. They don't know. So they're just haters. They don't know anything. But we take the opposite. If we have the phronesis, we've integrated our experience of nous. By getting there through the art of the dialectic, we can maintain that state by doing the dialectic at all times. Which is cool, because we don't just have the experience of nous as a one-off crazy experience that happened to us in a near-death experience, or when we took some acid, or when we were playing sport and we had a moment where we had that experience, or dancing, or in childbirth, or in breath work, or in fasting. There are many ways people have had this experience of nous, but the difference is we are getting them through an art that we can therefore integrate or join with that integration of that experience that you can make sense of. People who have a one-off usually don't know what it was. They have some feelings about it. It's real. It seems to be me. It helps overcome my fear of death almost always, or diminishes my fear of death, let's say, diminishes my problems because they don't seem real compared to this experience of reality. It does have a diminishing effect on problems. Doesn't remove them, by the way. But we are having it in a way where we are ultimately removing our problems to help get there, understanding that place when we can recognize it when we're there, but also practicing it, demonstrating it. It's important to demonstrate what we define so that we can integrate it. That integration is called phronesis. That's a virtue. The virtue for which we trade in the other virtues. So the Stoic idea of virtue that was shared with a friend in chat, by a friend in chat, was some people think the virtues, there's no happiness other than being a stoic man and suppressing our virtues. Oh, I'd want all the cake, but no, beat me up. No. Be a man and eat only one cake. Of course not. The text says, of course not for readers of the Phaedo, real learners, according to the way we're learning it here. Why? Because phronesis is the thing that makes the virtues worthwhile, the currency you trade them in for. What is it? A certain state of self. In fact, that's so important. Let's repeat, which is learning. By seeing it in the text. The only valid currency for which these virtues here are exchanged is phronesis. That's an initiation. So it's a spiritual learning, and if we don't, when we get to that sixth dimension, or fifth and sixth, when we get to the fifth dimension, Hades, or the realm of being, we'll be in the mud. And in the last section, we learn more about the kinds of muds and rivers and marshes that are in the underworld. We want to be on the surface. We don't want to lie outstretched in the mud. We want to be purified and perfected and dwell with the gods in the sixth dimension. And then Google says that there is no doctrine of virtue. Okay, well, let's not look to Google for our insights then. It was funny when you argued with Google. Okay, it sounds funny. Let's maybe instruct Google to master the Greek version or the Balboa translation of the Phaedo, and maybe put that into your AI thing, and maybe it'll give you better answers. So if we get there, we will dwell with the gods. Many other staff bearers, this is truthful. This, you throw a stick and you'll meet someone who say, oh, I'm really spiritual. Socrates will say, actually, many people claim to be spiritual. Many people carry the staff. What we might say today, many people have the crystals, but few are the actual spiritual people. And that's true philosophy, by the way. And this is, the integration is phronesis, that to which we trade the virtues in for. So all the practice, upgrades, is the upgrading sound. And so we're curious, what the heck is phronesis? There is one time he here we go. This is one key time. I only think one of the only times he talked about it directly. To remain in contact with the beings. When you pass into that, okay, so this is what it isn't. If you don't do this kind of learning, philomathesis, philosophy out of the logos, that's verified in contemplation or the experience news, then you'll be dragged around by the body and the perceptions of the body. You'll be training your soul to be like the physical. You'll wander around confused and dizzy as if your soul were drunk. You're drunk. But if you investigate self according to self, this is our big repeating clue. self according to self. Definition. Dialectic. You can pass into that realm that is pure, eternal, and deathless. So we can use these terms to do a dialectic on being. And you remain in the same way because you're akin with it. Your training of the virtues is a practice that will make you akin to that world. So that when you get there, if you arise, so if your spiritual experience or your yoga was through self according to self, through the dialectic, then you can cease from your wandering. It will have a diminishing effect on your problems, your dizzy, wandering drunkenness. But you can also remain according to the same in the same way about those beings, and you can remain in contact with such being. This state of self is called phronesis, and CB says, elegantly said. When you argued with Google about the virtues, you kept telling it you were right and it made a mistake. It kept telling you that you were right and Google made a mistake. Oh, that's good. Make Google into a philosopher. That would be the right use of technology, by the way. The problems that we face, mass exploitation, tyranny, mass surveillance, corruption, destruction of the planet, amassing of nuclear weapons that can bring extinction to humanity. It's not technology's fault. Technology has given us the ability to play out the consequences of our problem with devastating effects. But if we were in the game, if you trained Google and AI to master philosophy, we could use technology to help people. We could just, like, this is literally the channels, the use of technology, the use of YouTube and YouTube algorithms to do that which is most beneficial. So, we could turn it all around. All you gotta do is train your AI in philosophy and see what happens. All we gotta do is help people to pick up the love of this game. And of course, we know, as we talked about, Socrates being murdered, not passing it on to Plato, not helping Aristotle, the influence of Aristotle, the influence of the Catholic Church who shut down the academy, caused the Dark Ages, replaced understanding with absurd faith, killed anyone who wanted to read for themselves. Ain't no readers here. Just blindly obey us and give us your money and do what we say. We know it's not contentious to say last 2,000 years or 2,500 years was full of mass oppression and ignorance and bloodshed and nobody learning from their mistakes. Because what's learning from mistakes? That's the last stage of the dialectic. To learn is the dialectic. The last stage of the dialectic is to reflect on it as a whole. Google says you have an undergraduate understanding of Platonism. Okay, well, I wonder what gives Google the qualification to hand out qualification. So we can reflect on it as a whole, but also reflect on it as a cause. And so share this. Maybe you can do a better job than me. Go for it. Share your experiences and your understanding with others. Let us know how it goes. Sharing the art of the logos, because not a lot of people know that there is such a thing as the art of the dialectic. And how we can do right learning. And how we can understand our problems. And how we can use it to distinguish what philosophy ain't in the mainstream, or the Aristotle, Emperor Justinian, Latin tradition, physical, empirical is the wrong word, materialist, without the word the, so they could never even do philosophy to begin with. They don't know this. And they don't know that there's a system called the dialectic that can help you understand it and address it. So share it. Right. I can use the arguments Soc says by changing the terms and keeping its relations in the same analogy and ratio. Absolutely. And that's what we're doing here. We're keeping the same relationship of the dialectic that will help us in our trusting and repeating in learning, rolling it over to a higher dimension, just like analogy. You roll it up to apply that dialectic to our true philosophy, and then we roll that up, take it as a whole, but also apply it to a higher cause, apply it to the realm of being, and that's what. And we even do that here. What happens if we bring the dialectic to this sixth dimension? Same relationship with our friends and masters. What's our relationship that we're developing here in this group, in this community? Dialectic relationship. Apply that to the sixth dimension. That's how we can get to the seventh. That's what awakened our super ultra mega question. And I thought I was going to sneeze. Now, what's that called? What's that called when you go through a set of terms, you see what it is, you see how it functions, you see how the different ways it relates to things, and then you bring it all together as a whole, you synthesize it as a whole, but then you don't just understand how it unfolds, how it functions, how it relates to others. So let's use the dialectic in our thinking here. So we're talking about learning. So you define it, self itself, definition. You talk about how it functions. You want to define what a bike is. But you also have to talk about how a bike functions or demonstrates to really understand a bike. But then you also have to talk about bike shops and BMX tracks and how you can do a wheelie to impress the girl that you have a crush on, how you can do sweet jumps and get sweet air when you're doing your mad jumps and tricks. Division into other areas and relating to other people. And then those other people not only look back on you and how cool you are, but maybe they want to get a bike themselves. Okay, so this process is an unfolding. This is an unfolding. So someone had to cause the bike, create the bike, and then the bike had to be used. And then the bike can then be used to impress girls with your sweet mad tricks and make friends at the BMX track and get you to the shop quicker. And then finally, it will have an effect. People will love bikes. People will have more bikes. People look after their bikes. This is an unfolding of creation. But at the end, this last stage of our unfolding, we take that unfolding and synthesize it. We bring it all together to create an understanding of the whole. Of the whole. So we used it in terms of the creation of the bike, but if we applied this not just to the creation of the bike, but our understanding of the bike, if someone said, "Oh, I've never seen a bike before. What's a bike?" Well, I can define it for you. Oh yeah, it's a thing with handlebars and wheels and stuff that's made by a bike maker. But what if he went further and talked about how you use it and the consequences of using it? If you went through that unfolding of your reflection and reasoning, you would then, at the end, be able to bring that whole reflection into a whole, and now you have synthesized it. You've come back on the beginning. That thing you started with just a definition, you now understand as a greater whole. Or greater understanding of the whole. That's synthesis. But there's also analysis. You can reflect on that process. How is it that bikes can come to be? How is it that I can reflect in this curious way and understand not just a bike, but anything I want to wonder about, or even the realm of the soul or the realm of being? So there's our analysis. This last stage is called synthesis and analysis, which is what? Not just the unfolding, not just the bringing it together as a greater understanding of the whole, but understanding of where did this bike come from? Its cause. How did somebody even make up a bike? Or how was I able to? Okay, let's make some space. How is it that we can understand in this curious way? Or, applied to the dialectic, how is it that the thing that helps us to learn the best is the thing that we do in philosophy, the art of philosophy? And how is it that that's what allows us to get into the realm of being? And how is it that the same thing, the dialectic, allows us to make sense of the being? So it's not just an experience, it's nous. How is it that the dialectic allows us to integrate the being or join with it? How is it that this creates the phronesis? How is it that we can unlock even greater questions in that sixth dimension? This is a fantastic thing. How is it that, therefore, if it's the same thing at all levels, at all times, in the highest possible way, we can harmonize our soul to that one activity? We can desire with this part of our soul. We can seek with this part of our soul. We can use to reason with this part of our soul. And we can function with to help our friends artfully with that higher. Those are the four virtues: temperance, courage, wisdom, and justice. How is it that it's the same thing? How is it that it's, therefore, we can harmonize our souls? How, by the way, in the text, Socrates says that the virtues are a harmony. Harmony. He gave us that. And he said that's why the soul itself can't be harmony. Because harmony is what we call the virtues. So the vices are disharmony. If you said the soul was a byproduct of the physical body, like harmony of a guitar is a byproduct of the physical guitar, this is the section in the text around page 62, then there can't be good and bad souls. There can't be virtue and vice. Because harmony can't be disharmony, because it's harmony. So if the soul was harmony, then there's no such thing as vice. Because vice is, by definition, disharmony of the soul. This was his argument to show that the soul isn't a byproduct of the physical world, as Aristotelians or materialists might say, in the modern tradition that we have to wake up from. But also he was using this is a funny thing philosophers do sometimes, using a specific argument that not only addresses the question, but helps us, because we want to know what virtues are, because we want to integrate our experience into the virtue of phronesis. So if the virtues are therefore harmony, harmony means everything has to be singing the same note, or in a chord, their own version of that note, whatever octave they're on, whatever level of the soul you're on. So how is it that we can harmonize our soul onto a single activity, which is our learning, which is also our learning leads to where we come from, what we do in philosophy while we're here, and what we'll take with leads us to our goal where we're going and helps us to understand it, experience it, and integrate it. Why is it that we can harmonize the soul? Why is it because there's this one thing? What created such a magnificent, beautiful system? So every level is the same structure. We can use the dialectic to diagnose where we are in our level of learning. And we also talked about in the Parmenides using the dialectic to recognize different ways of thinking and levels of consciousness or states of mind. So when we go through this reflection, we can define it. How is it demonstrated? How is it divided up? That's an unfolding. Then at the end, we have to synthesize all of that together, and to understand, synthesize it, take it back to the beginning. Whoops. Take it back. Take it back to the beginning. To understand what we defined to begin with as a greater whole. But also we analyze it. Hang on a second. What's the cause of it? All of this is within the dialectic, and it's only got 4 stages. Isn't that beautiful? And each stage is just a different combination of 2 terms, self and other. So there's one cause of the dialectic, we call dialectic, that involves 2 parts, same and other, has 3 stages of unfolding, has 4 categories, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another kind of unfolding inherent within the dialectic itself. Isn't that beautiful? So we're talking about the aspects of it. So what have we got here? Well, let's use yellow. So we've got an unfolding. We've got an let's use got an unfolding. We've got a collecting into a whole. Unfolding. We've got a collecting together or unifying into a whole. But then we have an analysis reflecting on the cause. Reflecting on cause. Its cause. The unfolding leads into a collection of together into the whole, and then you can take that whole and you can wonder about what the heck is the cause of this whole. Reflecting on, reflecting on its cause. 3 categories. What do we do when we have another pattern of 3? Rub it together with the other ones. Hang on a second. Let's see if it works. Some space. So, sorry about that. We have key terms, we have some patterns, and now we play. That's what we're doing here. Ooh. Playing. So, how do we play? Don't know why it's doing that. Let's hope it doesn't happen again. Keeps changing the scene by itself. So, how do we play? Can we use one from one level to better understand another? This question, where do we come from? Does that relate to our unfolding? Did we have to unfold from somewhere? What do we do while we're here? Is this singular art of philosophy that can unify our soul? Is that a collecting together into the whole? By the way, all through the text, Socrates has been saying, self according to self. Whoops. Self. Maybe I gotta put it in inverted commas. Self according to self. Okay, I don't know how to search for multiple words. There's lots of selves. Okay, I'm not gonna find search. If I do a search for self, I'm not gonna find it. So let's. All the way through in his explanation of what philosophy is and what the yoga of the soul is, he has been using the expression the soul seeks to be self according to self. There's another one. I mean, I probably haven't highlighted them all, so they're not going to stand out to me. Here we go. Collect self together, out of the body. Collect self by self out of the body. Dwell alone, self by self. Desirous to have soul, self by self. It's all the way through this text. So, could we say that this work that we're doing here that Socrates is telling us about, so what are we doing? We're playing, we're rubbing the things together. So, what we're doing while we're here, does that also fit with collecting ourselves together into a whole? Kind of does. Just as, where do we come from? Where did we unfold from? Interesting. When we repeat the text of the Logos, hopefully understanding its structure, do we unfold all the parts of the text to our friends, to ourselves? When we repeat it and we talk about it over coffee? Yeah, it's kind of an unfolding, isn't it? So our learning is kind of an unfolding that we repeat. The art of the dialectic is kind of a collecting self together. In meditation, you are collecting yourself together on a singular thing. Reflecting on cause. Is the cause of the dialectic something in being? Is being the cause of our physical world? Where we are we going to what causes our soul, mind, world? And does it have a higher level of cause, of course, that even when we apply this to phronesis, did we get there through an unfolding through our reincarnations? Yes. When we are in the realm of being, as we read in that section, are we supposed to, while out of the body, collect self together? So even in the realm of being, do we collect self together as a whole through the out of the dialectic? Yes. And ideally, in the sixth dimension of being, do we reflect even on its cause to go to the seventh? Yep. So these three levels explain the three levels of learning, leading to super ultimate question, Dynamite. but also it's within each of the levels. Let's try it. Level 1, learning. Is it as a whole, can you say it's an unfolding of the text that you repeat? Yep. Wow. Within that unfolding, do you have to unfold the text? Do you have to unify it into a whole in some way to understand the text as a whole that you're repeating? Yep. At the end of that, do you sit down with the coffee and reflect on how great Socrates was to be able to unfold that and see it as a whole? Not just see his doctrine as a whole of philosophy, but humanity as a whole, such that he can unfold this dialectic to us through time, seeing all of us as a whole, therefore have a dialectic with us through 2,500 years of time. Isn't that an amazing cause, as is the mind of Socrates? Yep. So we do all that while we learn. When we are, what are we doing? We're testing, we create a question, which is what? How do we rub these terms together to gain new insights? We create a hypothesis. Maybe we can see this to understand these three categories of learning, or the three rational questions that make us rational. And within them, see them within them. That's our hypothesis. So we need questions and hypothesis, and we have to do it. So this is our question of what it means to read. These three here. Got to do it. See if it works. All right, so this true philosophy, is it a collecting ourselves together into a whole as a soul through the out of the dialectic, which itself is the collecting together of, as we saw here, which is that collecting together as a whole? Yep. Within that collecting of it ourselves into a whole, do we have to have an unfolding process? We have to go through the learning, or we have to go through an unfolding of our life to get to this time where we come across this podcast and we realize that we are here for a reason? Yep. And within that learning, is there an unfolding through definition, demonstration, and division? Yep. So within this unfolding process, within this collecting together process, do we then collect ourselves together as a whole now that we learn how to unify the parts of the soul towards a singular activity of the dialectic? Is that a collecting ourselves together as a whole, as a living human being that has been unfolding in our life? Yep. At the end of the dialectic that we're using to do that within the thing itself. So we're going, we are a dialectic and we're doing a dialectic on the dialectic. So within the dialectic, is there a collecting themselves together as a whole? Yep, that's that synthesize stage. So as a human being going through learning, do we reflect on our cause while doing that? Our purpose, why we're here, where are we going? Is that one of the questions of being a rational human being that we are learning to be? Yep. While we're doing the dialectic, are we wondering what the hell a dialectic came from? What is its cause, and what is its purpose to return to its cause? Does it have a cause in being, and is its purpose to reach there where we're going? Yep. Within ourselves, are we unfolding until we can collect ourselves together with the virtues and with our education and philosophy? And in doing that, does it give us what we need to reflect on our purpose, reach the meaning of life, reach our cause? Purpose being the cause for our creation? Yep. So we're doing it as people. Within the dialectic, is there a reflecting on cause? Yep. That's the analysis stage. So within the dialectic, within our process as humans, within the text itself, within our destiny, these three parts are all within this part, which is itself this part. So, learning is an unfolding, philosophy is collecting together in a whole, and in this collecting together as a whole category, it itself has three parts, has an unfolding part. You had to come here from somewhere as a human. You have to be doing this collecting yourself together as a whole, and that will be mastering the art of dialectic, which can allow you to reflect on and know our cause, our purpose. So yeah, philosophy, our hypothesis is playing out. Hooray! Finally, can we say this contemplation of being is a reflection on cause? Let's see. Is our cause being? Is the cause of the physical world being? Is this Socrates' second search for causes? Yep. Is the highest kind of reflection contemplation? Yep. Okay, so that understands this, but within this, can we see within this, is there an unfolding? Did we have to come from somewhere? Is our unfolding through reincarnation to reach this sixth dimension where we can escape the prison of reincarnation? Yeah, we did go through an unfolding process in our individual lifetime to reach Nous in the true spiritual tradition, but also humanity has to unfold to the point where we can actually see the value of philosophy, even though Socrates was killed before he could pass this on to Plato properly, and before Plato could then help Aristotle. Therefore, we've gone through an unfolding of the implications of what happens if we don't have philosophy and the terrible consequences that follow. We've lived a dialectic of what philosophy ain't. So that's a human unfolding that we now have the text to collect ourselves together with. We can, as a species, unify together in a shared understanding that isn't divided anymore. Dividing is the unfolding. Collecting together as a whole is the synthesis, because you know what? Everyone can play. Everyone can understand. It doesn't pick sides. You don't have to be Jewish or Christian or black or white or Nazi or man or woman. Everyone can share. So philosophy itself gives us a way of collecting ourselves together as a whole. And as we collect ourselves together as a whole, seeing ourselves as one race of humans in the human race, making us rational by asking these three questions, does it give us what we need to address human problems, create the safety and time and space and encouragement, and give us the skills to reflect on our cause, know why humanity happened to exist, and what's its purpose within the whole? Yep, it does. So, within an individual reaching this level of being, we go through these three stages, which is our cause. Humanity, through this period of recollecting into a whole the truth of philosophy from Socrates, we are going through these stages to reflect on our cause, but also within the dialectic itself. So as an individual, as a species, and within the art of dialectic, when we reach being, that is the cause of the dialectic, because if the dialectic has to exist, it has to exist eternally for everyone. Anyone can play this game. That's what allows us to have a destiny of man, the destiny of man. What allows us to collect humanity together in a shared purpose, a shared understanding, doesn't pick sides, can benefit all. So the dialectic itself, is it, when you reach being, can you see all that unfolding as a whole? Yeah, you're seeing eternity. When you reach being, do you then collect it all together into a singular experience called phronesis, a singular state of self? Yep. And can you use that phronesis to then reflect on the cause, or as Socrates says, meet the better men and gods in the sixth dimension, freed from the prison of reincarnation, to make the journey to the seventh place, only reflecting on the cause of being? Yep. So what did we see? These three kinds of things can define the three levels of learning, the three questions that makes anyone rational, and the three stages of the dialectic. And within those three categories, defined by unfolding, collecting together, and reflecting on the cause, those three are within each of them too. Wow, it's ducks all the way down, or turtles all the way down is the expression. So what? Well, we've seen those three within the dialectic, so this way of understanding human culture individual souls, and the art of humanity itself, the art of the dialectic, is within this simple 4-part structure of the dialectic. 2 terms. So simple. But it explains the whole. That's remarkable. Why? What caused this? How could it be so elegant, beautiful, all-encompassing, and beneficial, giving us what we need to reach our destiny? Good question. This is wondering about its cause. Let's keep that question in mind. How the heck can this be? It's so elegant. It explains everything. Human history, individual souls, all spiritual traditions. It can unify. There is so many problems within humanity that can only be solved with the art, by definition. So it not just explains all the many things, it can heal the many things. Not just heal the many things, take that healed humanity, unified humanity, and help us reach our purpose. So it can create the excellence of the human species, the excellence of human souls, or the highest spiritual enlightenment, and the excellence of understanding. How can this do all that? It's so freaking amazing. It's like the highest thing possible. I challenge anyone to create a higher thing. Okay, maybe it can give free ice cream to everyone every day. Well, actually, no. If we were unified together as a whole, we would just be sharing our resources to create the space to rationally be used. Rationally, we have these 3 questions, so we're rationally looking at all the resources on the planet, rationally distributing it as a whole, to most efficiently, sustainably, renewably use the resources of the planet to protect the planet, remove our need for work under the destructive, inefficient, tyrannical systems of wealth inequality and capitalism and fascism. So everyone would have ice cream every day if they wanted it. They might not want it. So yeah, even ice cream every day. How can the dialectic be so all-encompassing, beneficial, profound, and give ice cream to everyone every day? That's a question. We are reflecting on the cause of what collects us together as a whole and unfolds the human myth, the human dialectic, the human story, the human narrative, and maybe the narrative of all creation in the realm of becoming our 3D world. We are wondering about how its cause is. Now, there's a name for this. These are the 3 levels of ousia. Ousia, if there's a realm of being. By the way, Socrates describes this in the text. Let's go back. So this confusing section of the text where he uses the sexy word. Where did he say it? He used the sexiest word in the text. Here we go. So when he's explaining this, the final boss that we're preparing for, the nature of the realm of being, he called her big, broad-breasted. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. What does that mean? Fertile, creative. And he goes on, broad-breasted and overflowing. What's that? He is explaining in the nature of being the generative or unfolding aspect of being. What's another word for being? Ousia. Broad-breasted, overflowing, and present everywhere was the text. So being that he describes in our final boss, the description of the true earth, unfolds, has that kind of ousia. But we've seen ousia means to collect ourselves together, to reflect on ourselves. So we should find that self-reflecting or self-contained or non-corruptible, self-sustaining aspects in this final boss too. It's beautiful, continuous, not composing or corruption, no disease. So he's giving it in the negatives. It's self-contained. It's climate controlled. So that's funny. Climate controlled is something that he didn't even know about 2,500 years ago, but we have that in our home air conditioning. The whole earth, the whole. Okay, so it's littered all the way through. But even as a definition, hyparxis. This was the big word, used once. All of the beings exist according to the same ousia. So there's our ousia. So all of these aspects of beauty that we do the dialectic to, the aspects of being, the beautiful, the good, the equal, the greater, the less, the beauty, the good, the just, the holy, all of these beings that we stamp the seal of that which absolutely is, they are self-contained as a singular hyparxis ousia. Just like, by the way, do that to the soul too. I'm not gonna do it for you, but you do it.
Wow.
Okay, the same ousia, that's the self-contained, and it has to. So for even, okay, this is a clue here, and it has to be this way, and we had to know it for even this logos to be discussed. Therefore, there is a necessity for them to exist in a self-contained whole in being, within which must be the logos. So there's a clue to our question we've just given birth to. How can this be? Well, it must exist self-contained in the hyparxis of ousia. The logos or the dialectic really, the dialectic must be within this ousia that our soul has to be in before we were born, for us to be able to remember it and recognize it and see the value and to be able to do it. Ain't no one looking around and seeing a tree, a frog, and dialectic sitting next to the tree and the frog. It's not physical. So how the heck can we do it? How can we remember it? How can we recall it? How can we use it to understand all of humanity, all of human souls and spirituality, and all of understanding itself? And free ice cream. It has to, well, we ain't seen it in the physical world. It had to exist as part of the whole of being. That was in the text. Cool. So that collecting together as a whole is ousia. Now we've got the unfolding, the broad-breasted unfolding generative kind of ousia, unfolding from the realm of being or the 5D world into the fourth dimension and third dimension. So that's the hierarchical element of causal unfolding. So Socrates' second search for causes took him out of the materialists. Even before Aristotle, there were a lot of Aristotelians or materialists. So it's common, like it's not hard to see why we get trapped in our physical senses, because that's where we start. Every baby, where's our picture of the baby? Every person begins looking through your physical senses. You're born. All you know is the physical senses. If you're lucky, you come across this text or a Socrates person in your life, or maybe a experience of being that wakes you up to, hey, be special like Socrates and search for the second search for causes, mind being. So we can see why there were materialists even in Socrates' day, and we can see how easily Aristotle missed the mark and how easy it was for people to believe Aristotle, because there ain't a lot of true philosophers around. In fact, Socrates was murdered. That's what we're reading here. For being the best person. Interesting. So, we're born that way, but we have to get into the love of learning. And Socrates says, I got there by wondering what's the cause of this physical world. So, Socrates said, what's the cause? Well, where did we come from? By the way, where did we come from, or the cause is being. What's our goal? Where are we going? Being. What are we doing while we're here? Creating the state of phronesis, or being most like being. So you can say, one way of, so we talked about that reflecting on causes, by the way, analysis is also a kind of ousia. Reflecting, unfolding, reflecting on yourself, but reflecting on the higher. Earlier in today's episode, we talked about how this turns upon itself. You do the dialectic, but then you have more understanding about the thing you've just understood to do another dialectic, which is going to be better and better. You're unfolding or spiraling upwards. So these are the three kinds of causes: the unfolding, the collecting together as a whole, the reflecting on the cause. These are the four kinds of ousias. And by the way, Socrates says, even when I reflected on the cause of the physical world, I took this with me into the realm of being, and I asked, what's the cause of causes? That is what, yes, so that's what we added to this, our question here last time. What is the cause of even the cause of the physical world? That's our mega super ultimate question, Dynamite. What is the cause of that realm of being? What's it like? What's it like as a place? What's it like to have as a state while being human? Or rather, what's our learning that we can do here to access it while we're here and integrate it and function with it? The seventh dimension. So these are three levels of ousia. So all of our learning can be understood as ousia, each stage. Within each, they have ousia. Isn't that cool? Concentration is a kind of practice, repetition of the dialectic that you have to unfold or do. When you're in that state of meditation, you are collected together as a whole. And then you can go from meditation to contemplation when you join with that. Three levels of ousia contained within the dialectic. So you can say everything is ousia. Each part is ousia. Each of the stages is ousia. And what's another way of saying ousia? Being. So when we go back to our sexy big-breasted ousia, broad-breasted. Not only is the realm of being overflowing and massive, it's present everywhere. Therefore, this idea, beholding, nous, of the self of earth, the true earth being, is a spectacle for the sight of the daemons, good daemons. We are practicing being like being a good daemon, because part of being is the dialectic. That has to exist, as we saw in that argument, for us to be doing it. So if we become like being with the dialectic, we are becoming good daemons, souls that are also beings that can also act artfully to guide people, like our individual spirit guide, like the daemons that we meet in the seventh, people who have completed their work and good gods in the sixth dimension. They are described as daemon-like. What can they see? The whole of the earth. The idea of the whole of being. They can behold the whole of being. That's the kind of ousia. So that's the seeing it as a whole, a spectacle for the good daemons, overflowing and broad-breasted in its unfolding, but also present everywhere. We are seeing that everywhere is ousia. It's all ousia. Our learning process is the unfolding kind of ousia. So our first stage of learning, philomathesis, right learning, that's the unfolding ousia. Let's move it up so we can see it a little bit. There we go. Funny. The right learning was the unfolding ousia. True philosophy is collecting yourself together. By the way, you can recognize the unfolding that you can repeat if you know the structure of the dialectic that the text follows. So dialectic there too. Collecting ourselves together is using the dialectic. That's the collecting as a whole, self-contained whole ousia. Joining with the cause of our existence is the reflecting on cause level of ousia. What's the cause of our reality? Within each of them, we just saw the unfolding, the collecting together, and the reflecting on cause is within each of them. So these are the three types of ousia that's in each stage of development. That defines each stage of development. Where we came from, our soul had to be with being or ousia. What we're doing here is developing and understanding and experiencing ousia, philosophy and phronesis. Where we're going into the realm of ousia, it's all ousia. It's all ousia. It's all ousia, which is all dialectic. The dialectic is the logos or the intelligible understanding expression of ousia. That's everything. And understands everything. You need ousia and the art of the logos. You need ousia, the demonstration or the experience, and the dialectic, the definition. That's phronesis, to have the experience and join with it. So what? Well, we have our super ultra mega question Dynamite on the table. If that's the case, if these three levels of ousia is within the dialectic that we've been carrying and mastering and is our virtue and is the kind of way of being that we need to be to get into the sixth dimension, get into the cool club with the good daemons, men and gods, then we are bringing these three levels of ousia with us to the sixth dimension. So that's our training. So we're probably going to be using that to get to the seventh because they're our fellow adventurers and travelers. Therefore, can we use that to answer any of these questions? What is our third level of learning? Not just experiencing and understanding ousia, but is there a cause of ousia? And is that cause somehow containing all of these three levels of ousia more causally, more purely, more simply? Where are we going once we get to where we're going, the sixth dimension? Is there an ousia beyond three parts of ousia? Is there an unfolding, a collecting together, and a reflecting on cause? Well, it probably can't be a reflecting of cause because maybe there is. What's the cause of beingness and contemplation? Is it something that has within itself an unfolding, a collecting together, and reflecting on cause? Could this thing, the seventh dimensional thing, have an unfolding? Well, it's the cause of all this unfolding, I guess. Does it unfold more purely? Right. So each level is a level of, now this is going to help us in our question. So we've seen ousia is in each of them, but there's a difference. This is analogy. There is sameness and difference. Each level has the same ousia, but they're very different. This is a trusting and repeating. This is a practicing and understanding. This is a direct experience and integration of ousia at different levels or intensities or dimensions. So if learning is the lowest, okay, you could say ignorance is the lowest of this because people are still unfolding their life when they're not even doing right learning. They are still collecting themselves together according to their families and traditions that are in ignorance. They still have a false idea of their cause, a kind of tyrannical maybe way of being or an unjust way of being that they're seeking. So On this side of the line, there is its negative reflection, or the part of the dialectic if it ain't. So there'll be levels of Aristotelian thinking, or Stoic thinking, or materialist thinking. So let's keep that aside and look at only what happens if you do think the logos is. As Socrates says, you have to permit the ideas of real being to be. So to be on this side of the level, you have to do what Socrates' teacher Parmenides is saying. Permit them to be. Keep your mind fixed on the counterattacks or objections. Do the dialectic. Define each of the aspects of being. That's where you turn the dianoia. But also keep in mind that there's a higher cause, maybe the self. That's the power of dialectics. So we're only on that side of the line. But on that side of the line, there are still levels. If you're like CBs, you are only in level 1, learning and repeating. Are we done with that quote? Okay. If you're like Simius, you are starting the game of philosophy. And then once we get better at it, especially if we can apply it to the final boss, hopefully we'll be in that state of phronesis. We'll have escaped the prison of reincarnation, and we have developed the art of the dialectic that we've been practicing and training, so we can ask, what is the cause even of being? What do we do even when we escape reincarnation after completing our work? So they're all ousia on various levels. Trust and repetition, understanding and practice, direct experience and integration. What's this one? Let's write that out. So we've got, let's go. Let's make some space. We've got, that's not very good. Let's go here. Trust and repetition. Move it down a little bit. Trust and repetition, leading to understanding and practice, or we would say dianoia and training, or dianoia and virtue. So lots of ways of saying those two. And then we have the experience, nous, knowledge, contemplation, and integration for phronesis. So our question is, what is the use of, let's give it a different color. So what is the dimension or the level of expression, because we're going to the higher dimension, the 7th dimension. What is the what of ousia? At this level. And we know within that we have the dialectic, and we have the experience or nous, or being. So you could say we experience being and we integrate it with the dialectic. We understand it with the dialectic and we practice it. We put it with the virtues into our way of being in our physical world. We have to trust it. So using the dialectic to repeat it, but we have to trust it with our being. Trust the being of Socrates. Repeat it with our dialectic. So you could say dialectic and being are the parts, but ultimately it's expressions of ousia. But if that's trust and repetition, what's the level of dialectic and what's the level of being? So experience, you're experiencing directly in being, integrating it with your, hopefully you've trained up the dialectic so it's part of how you think. So in phronesis, dialectic and being it's part of you. You're always the same as we read before. The state of self where you're always that way. The level of dialectic and your way of being, you are practicing in philosophy. That's what we're doing here. It's the meaning of our human existence. And to get into that, we have to start by having the material to do that practice of ousia, do that dialectic and integrating into our way of being on. You need the material. And every single time we do a review podcast, we see it more. All of this I didn't expect. I had no idea it was going to happen. I always thought we were going to start by going back to the beginning. But no, all this came to light. Oh my goodness, I had no idea. This isn't me talking, it's the Logos coming through. And it only came through because I trust in the being of Socrates and I am repeating it and looking for the dialectic while I repeat it. So, trust and repetition, use of dialectic and being, understanding and practice, use of dialectic and being, direct experience and integration of dialectic and being. What then is the adjectives that apply to our dialectic and being in the seventh dimension? What kind of ousia? This is the direct experience and the direct of being, of ousia, and the direct integration of dialectic. You are the dialectic and you are being. That's the state of self of phronesis. What can be greater even than the experience and integration of dialectic and being? What can be even greater than the direct having and integration of ousia? What's greater than being ousia? What kind of use or quality or relationship to ousia is even greater than the direct experience and being of it? That's our question. That's what we're going to figure out and have. Imagine a kind of ousia that's greater even than being ousia and knowing ousia and understanding it and having it integrated. What would be a level of dialectic better than having the dialectic integrated into your being? What are the two adjectives we are going to use to recognize we are in that state of enlightenment of the seventh dimension? We are in that state of learning. We are in that state of self. We are where we're going. That's beyond even our purpose, the destiny of our destiny. How will we recognize that level of participation in ousia? Because we need to judge. This is part of having an art. We can judge, oh, what's CB's level of ousia? He was very good at trusting Socrates, and he was very good at repeating the doctrine of learning. He could repeat the dialectic, so that's his level of dialectic and ousia. What about Simmias? He had low opinion of the frailty of human beings. He wanted to understand it for himself. He wants to practice it for himself. What about Socrates? He seems to have integrated the experience of being and the dialectic. That's why he's using it so well. But he said, I'm going to the sixth dimension. And when I'm there, I want to go to the seventh. What's the level above Socrates? What is the level that Socrates might not be at? Or maybe he is. Or maybe we just can't see it. Maybe he's the representation of this. And he is saying, by the way, you figure out the seventh. I'll meet you at the doorway of the sixth so I can join you going to the seventh. That's where Socrates is. He's saying, I am at the sixth. Whether you're reading me in the text 2,500 years later on the Awakening Philosophy podcast, whether you're in the prison cell with me right now, I am here. I'm not going to talk about the seventh yet, but that's where we're going. He said, imagine Hercules and Ionius, his partner. I'm Ionius, you're Hercules, you're the hero of this story, says Socrates. It doesn't really matter because we're together anyway. But we are the heroes on the adventure, which means if Simius represents this, Cebes represents this, Simius represents this, Socrates represents this, he wants us to meet him there because we want to go hand in hand, Hercules and Ionius, hero and partner, Batman and Robin, we would say today. Maybe not Batman and Robin because they're kind of equals. How about Superman and Batman? We want to go to the 7th. When we get to the 7th, how can we recognize it? What level of complete ousia, complete wholeness, complete ability, broad-breasted ability to manifest in our way of being? What level of self-contained power, what level of recognition of even our causes would we be in when we get there? How can we understand it, dialectic, and how can we recognize that state of being in there? That's our question. So we've got another level to our super ultra mega question dynamite here. But we've got a little bit of a more of a direction for we've got a greater question and we've got more fodder and direction for our hypothesis, and we need to be doing both because we are doing it. So this is our reading, hypotheses, questions, doing it. And the demonstration is a dialectic. So what do? We look for patterns. We push the implications and the divisions. We do it in the demonstration. We use the key terms with our definitions. We try and synthesize it together as a whole and wonder about the cause. So all of this is contained within the understandable structure of reality. So those of you, one of the big differences between what philosophy is and what it ain't is, most people, even people who claim to be philosophers, and even if they got PhDs on their walls, doesn't matter. Who cares? Who gives a crap? What we want to know is the truth. Okay? They will say that reality is not understandable. Number one. Psychologists, humans are not understandable. Just give them drugs to deal with the chemistry. Politicians, to have a state is not understandable. Philosophy isn't understandable, so here's a bunch of opinions from Kant and Hegel and in the lineage of Aristotle. But we have seen for ourselves, because we have had a question we have been building for 100 episodes. We have had a practice in developing hypotheses and carrying hypotheses. We are walking the walk and doing it. We have seen for ourselves, so in this level of our own understanding, the middle term, that reality is objectively rational and understandable because all of those dimensions, including the mysterious super ultra mega dynamite dimension of the 7th dimension, is understandable because they all can be incorporated within the simple, understandable structure of the dialectic, which itself is the model for understanding. So not only is it everything understandable, it's understandable within a beautiful, simple, precise, amazing, necessary system. And the system itself is the method for making it understandable to you. So as soon as that inner critic says, hey, the logos ain't no good, as Socrates said, because we were only at that level of trusting Socrates, that's Simius. Actually, that's all of them until Simius has to do his work. The problem with that is someone will use a very clever argument or use an anti-logos argument to shut you down, or will use Philonikos, lovers of fighting debate, to shut you down, or use a mythology or religion you're familiar with or feels true or sounds probable, and they will throw you into disarray and you'll end up hating the logos. You will say there's nothing sound and true and stable, so universally sound and true, so that's what the stable means, always in the logos. That's the greatest defect of the soul. Also, this is the greatest defect because you won't reach truth and being. And by the way, those people will say there is no soundness, truth, and stability in being itself. And of course, if you can't have these two, there's no art that the self can have. There's no excellence of self. Just like people who are convinced by those people, are tricked by those people, they'll think, oh, there's no good humans in the world because all these people I didn't judge as being not trustworthy. So these people will reject the logos, the understandability of the world, the knowability, understandability and knowability of reality, and the use of that in an art. You will be convinced by those people and you will get very sad, and you'll hate the logos, angry man, and you'll shake your fist. Because that's what gives them the paycheck on Fox News or on the Daily Wire or on YouTube or on TikTok or on CNN. Is they're very good at saying these things and shutting down the truth, because that's what they think knowledge is, says Socrates, through time to us, amazingly. That's why you have to go from trust and repetition to collecting yourself together into a whole, dialecticing the dialectic, mastering the art of the dialectic by understanding and practicing it. That's literally what we did today. And what did we see? Every argument, well, at least this argument against the logos, the greatest defect of the soul, that reality isn't understandable, we know for ourselves in our understanding and practice that is objectively, soundly, truthfully, forever, stably not true. Because we have seen this dialectic, which is understandable and is our practice, so we understand its understandability and we've experienced it for ourselves, is in each level. We have understood and experienced, because we've been doing philosophy, that reality is itself understandable. So we don't need beliefs or cults or traditions or groups based on anything other than understanding that unifies everyone. We know this. We can't be tricked like Simius and Cebes. We have just done it. We've seen it. We've seen the 3 levels of ousia inherent in the 4-part structure of the one system of dialectic. We've seen how it is used to understand each level and is within each level. And we have been playing with it to go beyond even the highest level of being, the 6th dimension, a level of being where you no longer have to reincarnate. You are with the good men, gods, and daemons. We're even using that to speculate and maybe bring us to the cause of the understanding of all reality, including being, all, not just the universe, the cosmos or the metaphysical, everything in creation is understandable because it follows a dialectic. The next stage is to keep doing that, keep practicing it, keep understanding it, because then we'll be able to directly experience it. And then the other objection, not only is a reality understanding or you unable to be understood with the logos, but it's not knowable in nous. We'll be able to experience nous, because that's the doorway, and recognize, understand, experience, and integrate the intelligibility of ousia more directly. So we'll be able to say, no, of course you can know reality. I'm there all the time. What are you talking about? Have a look. So again, another layer. And by the way, we want to also be using it artfully. So anyone who says there is no actual art that all humans should be learning from day one at preschool, there is no art that every ruler of every business, courtroom, company, Parliament House should be mastering. Of course there is. We've got it. Socrates has it. Can you not see? Well, let's sit down and you'll benefit by going through this process of levels of learning of the dialectic into participation of levels of levels of ousia that will culminate in this experience and integration of phronesis, and even then you can join the real party. What are they doing with their level of the dialectic? So all the kinds of objections that can come up can be understood to be inaccurate. By the way, intelligibility means both dialectic and being, understandable and knowable. The difference of learning is to what level of union with it at its hyparxis are you at? Are you trusting that it is understandable and knowable, or let's say ousia? And are you repeating that? Low level? I mean, of course, below that, there's all the rejections, all the Aristotle, or the materialist, but we're going to ignore that for now. Are you understanding and practicing it? Are you doing true philosophy? Are you experiencing and integrating that level of ousia? Are you at the sixth dimension? Are you pursuing the seventh? So it's all the same thing. The dialectic and experience, or ousia, understandability, knowability, the intelligibility, all the way down. It's just different dimensions or reflections. Just like if you are a 3D person and you look in a 2D mirror, it's the same you, but it's reflected at a lower level. It's a lower level of participation in reality. It doesn't have will. Your reflection doesn't have will or understanding or dialectic. Likewise, we are saying it's all the way up. There's unfolding. So, by the way, we can use a dialectic to explain that. There is an unfolding into diminished dimensions of ousia, which is logos and experience or being. That's the intelligibility. There's the unfolding of intelligibility into different levels of intelligibility defined by our ability to share in them. Are we sharing in them with trust and repetition? Great, you're learning, real learning. Are you sharing in it by understanding the dialectic and practicing it like we're doing right now? Great, you're doing true philosophy. Are you experiencing ousia directly? So a different level of being, different level of ousia, and recognizing the intelligibility of that experience. Oh, there's understandability, there are structures, there's a dialectic here. Great, you're in the sixth dimension. You're in phronesis. Are you going to the cause of ousia, the cause of intelligibility? What level of ousia is that seventh? That's our question. And now we've got a bit of a direction on how to go to answer that question. We are hypothesizing that it would be a kind of participation of ousia that's beyond even experience. A kind of level of integration of, so we're using the language here, a kind of experience of ousia that's even more direct than direct experience. There's a kind of integration into yourself that's even more immediate than experiencing it directly. What would that be like? To have the dialectic and existence, to have ousia, without even having to do ousia, without even having to experience it. This unfolding, this self-contained or knowing, let's zoom in a little bit so I can do it more legibly. This self-contained or self-knowing of this part here, this swirly part, and this reflection on cause these 3 levels of ousia what would it be like to have them more immediately than even an experience? If this is ousia is a hypoxis of all of those different ideas, these different aspects that are probably arranged according to the dialectic, that you can be all of those parts all at once. Is there a different level of oneness? That's a oneness. Is there a different level of oneness, different level of knowing everything, different level of being everything, different level of understanding everything that doesn't even have parts and is more immediate than that? More immediate. More immediate. Than having parts. Than parts. As a oneness. Or what's having the parts? More as self. What would be the kind of ousia you would have more as yourself without it being an experience or without it having parts? That's a hypothesis that we're going to carry with us as a way of contemplating our super ultra mega question dynamite, to take us beyond even this 3rd level of learning, philomathesis, true learning, trust and repetition of ousia, of the dialectic, true philosophy, the understanding and practice of the dialectic and ousia, 2nd level of learning, philosophy or philodynia, and the 3rd level of learning, philophronesis, the direct experience and the joining with the dialectic and ousia. What's beyond even that? What's even more immediate or even more self? That's the cause of this oneness. Because that's what we're after. That's the 7th dimension. That's where we and Socrates are heading. Socrates says, I'm telling you, I'm at this level. So Socrates is here. Simmias may represent this, or maybe Phaedo, I'm not sure. Cebes definitely represents this. Socrates saying, I'm Ionius, you're Hercules, we're partners, let's go to here. This is the true quest in the Phaedo, it seems. It has only come to light for us by doing it, being in this level. And we would have only got to be able to do it because we've had 100 episodes repeating it. So we've seen that the super ultra mega question dynamite might be the ultimate purpose of this perhaps greatest text, or one of the greatest texts ever read, definitely one of the greatest dialectics any human being can have here. And we know why. So those people who say, list of the great books, they often put Plato or the Republic in, but they don't know why. Now we know why. They're just repeating what they're told, that the Republic is amazing. They don't know why. Even teachers, they don't read the goddamn book. It's annoying because they claim to be experts. Forget them. We are doing it. And we're meeting Socrates here to go here. So this ultimate question dynamite and our tentative hypothesis that it might be a more direct or immediate kind of oneness, or a more immediate or more immediate ousia, or a more immediate selfhood of ousia, beyond even experiencing it completely as a oneness. That's what we're going to keep our mind on as we go through the text and practice this to bring us to this. And we'll use all this practice we're doing on our channel to, when we hit this, go to there, where we really need to be. It's no use just, hey, here's enlightenment. No. You got to practice, because you get stuck in enlightenment. Imagine that. Imagine getting stuck in the sixth dimension. You're even out of the cycles of reincarnation, so you can't go back to learn the art of the dialectic. That would be a terrible place to be trapped in bliss and beauty and ultimate reality. So we don't want to just jump into ultimate reality. We want to go through the text, practicing and understanding the dialectic as we go to each of the parts of the text that we're repeating, so that when we do jump into reality, we won't be stuck in the sixth. We'll have what we need to go from the sixth to the seventh. And that is what Socrates is telling us to do. You are Hercules. I am in the sixth, but I'm just your guide or assistant or fellow adventurer. Let's go to the seventh. And that's why we're going to go through the text and repeat it, see it as a dialectic, and that's learning, and practice the dialectic to each of those sections. We are making ousia more ourselves through the art of the dialectic. What's ousia? The dialectic and experience of being. The intelligibility. And that's what we're going to be doing. So, exciting stuff, meaningful stuff, important stuff, and now we see more about why we're doing it, so we have more motivation or inspiration to do it. So, huge. Right. So, very exciting. Another cliffhanger. We always seem to end on cliffhangers. I hope you find that interesting and enjoyable. I hope to see you as a fellow adventurer and guide on this quest to go through the text, practice the dialectic, so when we hit being, we'll all high-five each other. Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're all there, and it's outside of time as well. So, we can meet each other and go, let's use this to go beyond being, beyond escaping reincarnation to the seventh. To have even more intelligibility of dialectic and ousia, more immediately of self, because we're at the cause of even the dialectic. Let's go. I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Like and subscribe on YouTube if you like. Share it with your friends. Join the Discord if you like. Join us on Twitch or YouTube live streams. And support on Patreon if you're able to and you feel it worth doing. And I hope... free text underneath. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much. And now, I wave.